find yourself constantly feeling pressure to diet? Are you critical of your body type, shape, or weight? Have you ever seriously questioned where you derive your ideas of healthy, ideal body, and wellness from? Well, we're talking about it after the break.
Brokers, welcome to another episode of Brokers, where we talk about the unbelievable ish this country has done to keep us broke. Now here are your hosts, Amber and Erika.
Hey, brokers, I'm Amber.
And I'm Erika.
And this payday, we are talking about dieting and white supremacy, y'all. Ugh.
Is the ugh for the dieting or the white supremacy? Which one is it for?
I'm not even gonna lie, it's a little on the diet, heavy on the diet. But for the white supremacy too, because we don't like white supremacy around here, but
right,
heavy on the dieting. But no, specifically this week, y'all, we are talking about how dieting is used as a conduit to promote white cultural aesthetics and food norms. I know a lot of people have heard Malcolm X's famous speech going around the internet lately, but he starts off by asking us, who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the sole of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? And that's really what we're talking about today. One of the most effective tools of oppression is imbuing self-hate and a sense of unworthiness into the oppressed. And if the oppressed buy into it, and buy into the superiority of their oppressors, then of course we are less likely to spend our time seeking liberation and accept the unjust hierarchies that are around us.
So y'all know Amber in here talking about Malcolm X, so there is quite an episode in front of us apparently. But before we get to that, let's chat a little bit about the episode that we had last time, where we got with our good friend and my cousin, not really, but Corrigan Brown. And one of the most interesting things to me that we talked about is how entrenched this political establishment and these machines are and how much gets determined by them. And so Corey can talk to us about local politics and how we can all play a role in getting involved and having an effect in a relatively short amount of time, given many local elections are determined by hundreds or even tens of votes. So we recorded that episode in September, and so much has changed since September. But the one thing that hasn't changed is this cover up with Breonna Taylor. We talked about it a little bit during the episode, and it's like day after day, shenanigan after shenanigan. And we still just see how that leadership, or in this case, the lack of leadership on the state level, can be critical. And so that's what we've seen in that case. And hopefully, I'm hoping, unrelated to what we talked about with Corrigan, but I'm hoping these grand jurors get out here and embarrass Cameron.
Amen. The judge just unsealed everything today, y'all. So hopefully we have some piping hot tea coming down the pipeline soon. One of the things that is interesting is because we just talked about Breonna Taylor, and that seemingly has nothing to do with what we're talking about today, but really it is about the comprehensive lack of value that white supremacy places on Black lives. And one of the most insidious ways that shows up is in the diet industry. It promotes that larger bootstrap narrative that we hate so much here around Brokish, that we are responsible for our own liberation from bondage and oppression and injustice that we did not create. And that shows up in the diet industry by the ignoring of larger systemic failures like healthcare, food deserts, and racial capitalism that often contribute to why people who might be unhealthy and carrying excess weight are carrying that weight. So we're going to talk about that today, y'all. And even though dieting is not my favorite subject, okay, for a variety.
It's not any of our favorite. Nobody likes it. Amber, you ain't by yourself.
Oh, but listen, I am a graduate of the Oprah Winfrey School of Perpetual Dieting, okay? So, I feel specifically heavy in my sha-na-na, but I know I'm not alone. I know a lot of people listening feel the same way. And you feel like you're never going to be good enough, right? It's expensive, emotionally draining, and quite frankly, it don't work. Ugh. And I know that a lot of us are going through that. And so it's important for us to kind of go through the history of why we on the hamster wheel of dieting on purpose, because it was designed that way, just like all the other stuff that be getting us down.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything is related to a system. And I think, we talk about here on the show how America is famous for its propaganda, that it's all about what you do individually. But so many of these things are tied to how we live in these systems that are failing us every day.
Yeah. So one of the things that was interesting, because I actually had to do a little bit of research, despite the fact that I have been on a diet in some shape or form since I was about 7 or 8, I didn't really know how like the health and wellness industry originated in the United States. And shocker, surprise, surprise, it has its roots in slavery and a lot of the post-slavery moral movements. I know, like, y'all, seriously. So one of the things that is interesting is we all have heard about slave markets, right? Places where enslaved people were auctioned off, they were sold to enslavers across the United States. And obviously, the physical attributes of those enslaved people were front and center in those slave markets. Literally. And of course, that opened up a huge pathway for stereotypes about Black bodies to be perpetuated. Obviously, hips, weight, what the impact or the implication of the weight was. That's a lot of the stereotypes about Black men and their size and that relationship to violence or bruteness comes from those markets. A lot of the stereotypes we see about Black women, their size, their hips, their thighs, their bottoms, the sexualizing of those women, the assumptions about their fertility or lack thereof. Those things come directly from those markets. And it was out of that environment that we first started to see whiteness placing a value on a thin aesthetic. Like, it cracked me up that one of the main proponents of this whole thing was like a man named Sylvester Graham. And the graham crackers that like my kids eat, or probably your kids eat, that we all eat, that was a diet food in the 1800s, right? Meant to encourage white people to not look like what they assumed Black people were, which was big and sloppy and slovenly and lazy. And so a lot of those things are directly related to slavery. Temperance, dieting, sexual purity, those things were all pushed in tandem with each other to encourage white people to behave in a manner that separated them from the savages that they believed were the indigenous people and the enslaved people. So if we're going to talk about it, we have to be very clear that that's where it come from.
So Amber, when you talk about Graham, one of the folks who came after Graham, so many of you might not know, my first job out of college, I worked at Kellogg's. So I was in sales. And I used to sell out of the trunk of my car. I would have cereal and Pop-Tarts and Rice Krispie treats. Everybody loved it, right? I show up at the party and I got Pop-Tarts on deck. But as a part of the training, you go to Battle Creek, Michigan, and you get a tour of the factory and all that kind of stuff. And Kellogg was on some of that same stuff, right? They had like these health sanitariums where they would take people, right, to try to help them, air quotes, get their lives together in a bunch of different ways, supposedly mentally, physically, spiritually. And, the whole industry of breakfast cereal, what now is just, basically bowls of sugar, all of that like grew out of the Kellogg family and what they were doing back then. So, and you think about now how we had this whole movement of them bringing in and talking about and creating breakfast and how it's the most important meal of the day, and how that then got turned into serving just bowls of sugar, and then people blaming us for being fat and calling us unhealthy because of it. And like, we just doing what people told us to do.
And not only that, but it's so interesting because the same bowls of garbage they sell over here, they literally can't even sell it in the European Union. Like they literally cannot sell it nowhere else.
Not in the way they make it here.
That's exactly right. The ingredients are wildly different. The way that the products are packaged and marketing is different. And then they tell us, eat this breakfast. And then you eat this breakfast and you wonder why your kids can't sit still, why they grow in leaps and bounds. And then they say, well, you need to do better and make better choices. So come.
Yeah. And when we grew up, maybe when I grew up, Amber, because we know I'm older than you are.
Church.
But they put the toys in the cereal, Amber. I mean, we used to dig through the boxes of cereal to get to the toys. And it's like, all of these things set up, and then it's like, now y'all are mad at me, and now I have to then go on this diet to overcome this thing that y'all didn't propagandize me to do. So it's all very strange.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about it is this place is the only place that makes making bad choices so easily accessible. Like, this is the only place where you can get a box of sugar for $1, but a salad costs $10, right? And so you tell people who are already struggling, or you tell people who are having a difficult time to make these good decisions while you are intentionally underpaying them, while you are intentionally creating a system that makes it literally difficult for somebody to go to the grocery store and buy stuff straight out the ground, straight from nature. And then you wonder why they might have a little bit of a hard time maintaining a healthier weight. I'm shocked.
Exactly. But so, Amber, you talked a little bit about the history, but what I do is I just want to get in people's business. I want to know the behind the scenes. I want to know. So talk about your own sort of personal journey. You mentioned starting your dieting thing, and I hate Journey. It makes me think about The Biggest Loser, which I'm not going to talk about that show because that was hot garbage. But talk about what that meant to start that at 7 or 8.
Oh, so, first of all, Erika don't have nobody's business to get into, so she gonna get into mine. Y'all say a prayer for me. But I don't think
I'm gonna get in my own business too.
I don't think I've ever shared this on the podcast, but I used to weigh 400 pounds, like in real life. Okay. So I am the poster child for the $71 billion industry, but I started gaining weight early. By 7 or 8, I was already easily 30 or 40 pounds overweight. And I have had
overweight by whose standard, Amber?
Like, I was a big child, baby. It just, listen, we ain't even got a parse that Amber was a chunky child. Okay. I was overweight by any objective, subjective measure. I was a chunky child. I was. And so, yeah, I started gaining weight in grade school. I was very sedentary. Like, I like to do stuff that didn't require a lot of activity. I like to read. I like to write. I like to not play with other people because they teased me and that hurt my feelings. So I didn't want to play with nobody.
Right.
So, yeah, I started gaining weight very young. And by the time I had a gastric bypass surgery in 2008 at 24, I was 370 pounds. And I had already lost 15 pounds because I had been on a diet before that. They make you go on a diet before the insurance pays for the surgery. So at my heaviest, I was 386, 87 pounds. So, yeah.
So, Amber, I was also a chunky child.
No.
I was a chunky child, and I started becoming a chunky child probably when I was about like 6 or 7. That's when people started saying it. And, I think it was just a different time, right? Because I think kids are going to make fun of you no matter what.
True that.
If you're tall, they're going to talk about you being tall. If you're short, they're going to say that. If you're normal height, they're going to be like, you ain't nothing exceptional. I don't care what you are. Kids are going to talk about you. And that's just, I think, the experience of growing up.
True that.
But, back then, grown people would talk about you.
That part. That part.
Grown people would call you fat and be like, ooh, you done got so big. Or, saying this to like a 7 or 8 year old kid, it's like, wow, grown-ups. And I know we have come a very long way in the world in some instances. So I'm glad, at least I feel like grown people are doing less of that, but maybe I'm just seeing less of it. So yeah, I was a thick kid too. And I was a thick kid for a while. So it was like the kids at school would talk about me for being thick, my family members, my cousins, it was always something. And so as a result of that, I sort of retreated, right? Like, because I didn't want to, you don't, like you said, you don't want to be around people and all they're doing is calling you fat.
That's right.
And not only was I thick, then I had, all my natural hair glory and it was big. And then they used to call me Shaka, like Shaka Khan, which now I think about it, it's like, that's amazing. I wish somebody would compare me to Shaka Khan, right? But back then it was like, oh my God. So then I got big hair and I got a big body and it was just too much. And so I really, even like as I think about today, my family relationships, I've always sort of been on the edge and on the fringe because I never felt like super accepted because of the way they always talked about me. But I can remember that the summer right before I went to high school. So I was probably at my highest weight in middle school. I was about like 165 pounds, which would have been, more and I was probably like 5 feet tall.
Yeah.
So anyway, I remember specifically that the summer before I went to high school, I didn't call it a diet or necessarily think about it in that way. But I remember that every day I would my grandma would get these chicken nuggets from Sam's and she did. And she was one of the people that called me fat all the time too. Anyway, so she bought these chicken nuggets from Sam's, Amber, and I would count out 10 of them and I would eat them. And that would be what I would eat for the day.
The whole day, Erika?
Is the 10 chicken nuggets. And so by the time I went to high school, I had lost like 30 pounds in the summer.
Wow. And
since then, that was probably close to the biggest I've ever been as an adult, even in high school. Before when I was younger. But I'm saying so at 135 pounds, my whole adult life has been fighting to never be bigger than 135 pounds. Because that was the place when I was like, oh no, I'm never looking back from here. And there's just so much there's so much trauma and drama and all this stuff wrapped into that. Because, people will see me now and they'll be like, you don't know. And I spend so much of my life, Amber, to this day, I can't shake it. I wake up and get on a scale every day.
Me too.
Even now.
Me too.
So I'm basically here saying that as we talk about the dieting industry, I'm still not healed and whole, Amber. I'm not. And I don't even know how to get healed and whole. I don't know how to escape from sort of what's going on, especially as I think about all the advertising and all the things that happened in the 80s and 90s around, whether it was low fat and low carb and all of those diet trends. And my grandma went to Weight Watchers. And so she was kind of trying to get me doing some of that. There was just so much stuff that was in your face. And I don't know how to decouple myself from all of that.
Oh, yeah. Listen, I want to play Michael Jackson's You Are Not Alone because, girl.
Not Michael, though. I don't know if this is a Michael.
I feel this is a Michael moment. But, even small things like at one store, I wear a 12 and in another store I wear a 14. And then in some stores, I might even have to get a 16. And I'm like, oh, not a 16. I fought so hard not to be a 16 child.
Yeah.
Lord, not a 6. It's all of those things that really bear no relationship to what am I putting in my mouth? How am I moving my body to honor it every day? But it's just those arbitrary things that you are socialized to focus on, right? And I weigh I have 2 scales. I have a scale from the dollar store. Let me give y'all just a little self-esteem advice. Get you a real scale so you can know how much you weigh. Then get you a scale from the dollar store that's going to always say you weigh 128 pounds, okay? Because let me tell you something, that dollar store scale be delivering me from a whole bunch of stress.
But Amber, the whole point of this show is that you shouldn't care about what the number on the scale is.
Let me tell you.
Y'all ignore her.
But that's the point.
She's still healing too.
You see what I'm saying? I weigh myself twice every day. Once so I can get depressed and pretend like I'm, going to try to do something. And then the other to be like, that scale is wrong. I weigh 128 pounds. And y'all, I ain't weighed 128 pounds since I was about 7 or 8. Okay. But yeah, it's really that kind of toxicity. And you know what's so crazy about it, that at least I think, is that those are the things that feel normal. You do it so long, you get so entrenched in it that when you don't do it,
sure,
it feels like you're not doing something you're supposed to be doing, right? And then you pay to go to the gym, and then everybody, at least people like me, they look at us like, well, what are you doing at the gym? You're fat. And I'm like, well, hell, I thought,
that's what you wanted me to do.
Yeah, I'm here, and so it definitely feels like a hamster wheel. And it's so interesting that we're talking about this today, because when we were preparing, I found that so much of this mirrors the exact same way we treat people who struggle financially. We do them the same way. We put this overwhelming pressure on them to be something they're not, or to try to get out of something that they shouldn't be in, air quotes. And then when they start taking the steps, we look at them and we judge them, right? And so it is so interesting to me that so much of how the diet industry works mirrors the same things that we tell people when we try to delude them into thinking they can manage their way out of financial inequity that a system was created to put them in, you know?
And when you talk about the parallels to the financial system and think about all those people who are going around like, look at me, I'm doing so well. And a lot of it's tied to your family history, right? So a lot of what we experience physically is tied to our own family histories, our genetics. And, you know, in the case of finances, we have people giving us money and, you know, us pretending like we did it. In the case of good genetics, we just get them. We don't know. So I think that is an interesting parallel.
Oh, yeah. And then don't forget the people who, because they're thin, they must automatically be healthy when they can put down more junk food than anybody in the Western Hemisphere. Like I have some thin friends that
Amber,
can
think
take it
about
down.
me and the 10 chicken nuggets. Like, how could I be healthy eating 10 chicken nuggets a day? But I get praise because it's like, oh, you smaller now.
Yes,
Look at you.
yes.
And I'm like, it must have not been good to eat them chicken nuggets every day.
Especially not if that was all you was eating, sis. You had a whole summer of processed food.
That's what but the world said, good job, Erika.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then the other thing too, you talk about working out and people asking you why you're there. So I was, until recently, I would work out every workday. I was going to a gym, a small gym with a trainer, and I would go every workday, Monday through Friday. Unless I was on vacation, I was at the gym. And then I would mention to somebody that I would work out, and it's like, well, why do you work out? And I'm like, why does anybody work out? Aren't we supposed to be here to have a good heart? Like, aren't we supposed to be here to get exercise and fresh air and just the camaraderie of being with other people, the social aspect of everything? But y'all asking me why I'm working out, and then they gonna ask you if you go, why you there, and if you're not there, why you not there?
Yep.
It's like, come on.
You can't win. And that is why dieting is a $71 billion industry, because it has everybody believing that where they are is not where they're supposed to be. And we focus on superficial metrics instead of asking substantive questions really designed to figure out whether a person is truly healthy at their core. Because the reality of it is you cannot see that just looking at external superficial stuff.
No.
Yeah.
No. And Amber, how has it been for you during the pandemic? Right? So I am having extreme anxiety around the fact that I am probably 3 to 4 pounds bigger than I normally am. And so somebody's probably listening to like 3 to 4 pounds, shut the hell up. But it is what it is, right? I told you about my history and my trauma, so leave me the hell alone. But it is a battle every day. And it's like, I'm going back and forth on this spectrum of, there's a global pandemic happening, right? Everything is not what it used to be. Give yourself grace. And it's okay if you don't work out today. To heifer, you need to get up. And why can't you? And you have the energy and you have the means. And I feel like there are these devils on my shoulder and I just don't know what to do. But how has it been for you in managing through this?
I have gained 17 whole pounds during the pandemic. Okay. I was like, right around March, I was like a hair away from meeting my financial goal. I mean, not my financial goal. Definitely.
Well, if you get that way you want it to be, sometime it can help you to hit your financial goal. That's some wisdom.
But so my struggle has always been maintaining a number that didn't have a 2 in front of it. That was like my psychological thing. Like that was my psychological 135. Like once I got under 200, I was like, oh, child, I ain't never going back to nothing with a 2. And then the pandemic came. And I was like, ooh.
And Corona was like.
Yeah, Corona was like, yes, sis, you've been drinking all these Capri Suns with your cheering and eating all these Little Debbie snack cakes. Welcome back to Tuville, sis. So yeah, that's been real hard because I feel so much like a failure, if I'm just being honest.
Absolutely.
I feel like overwhelmingly like a failure. And you know what's crazy? I know so much of it's psychological because my thought is never like, okay, how can we vary away from eating the things that just are not good for you and balance your diet, move your body, do the things that commonsensically you should be doing regardless. My thought is always, what detox tea can I buy? What, cleanser?
What quick fix?
What apple cider vinegar do they have in the store? Like that is always my mind immediately. Like, what can I do to get this weight off of me? And that really is sad because I have a whole pantry full of vinegar, detox teas, and, cleansing pills. And I gain and lose the same 7 water pounds just about every other month, you know.
Yeah, and I just really don't know how to. Okay, clearly I'm like, Erica, it's not like you need to go see a therapist, like, for real. Like, you really need to. But I just keep thinking about, like, all the things, how everything has sort of gotten me to this point, and just thinking about how we say that what other people say about us doesn't matter, but it really matters so much. And those sort of soundtracks keep playing, at least in my head. And I'm like, I don't know how to turn it off. I don't know how to dissociate my personal value from my weight. I don't know how to try to show up in a world where I'm not trying to be, physically perfect in the American standard.
Yeah.
Because I got a little Corona booty and I'm like, I should be okay. You know what I'm saying? I didn't tell you. Yes. But I'm like, I should be basking in my Corona booty, Amber. And instead I'm like, I don't know if this is, if this is your aesthetic, Erica, like the soundtrack I have for myself. And anyway, it's just super hard. And the big thing for me, Amber, is I keep thinking about, what am I doing to my kids, right? Like,
Oof.
Because I have 2 little girls and I know that they're taking away some of these bad messages and some explicit ones I'm sure I'm giving. Like, there was a couple weeks ago, a friend of mine and I decided we were going to go on a diet, right? We were like, okay, we're going to stop the drinking because, the drinking during COVID has been
off the chain.
More for me. Yeah. So we're like, we're going to stop the drinking. We're going to, because I know from having done this for so many years, Amber, I know how to drop the weight. I know how to starve myself just right, basically, right? I know how to do that. And then I was like, yeah, girls, I woke up and I was like, the scale wasn't kind to me and I'm going on a diet. And then later on, I was eating something and they were like, well, that ain't on a diet, is it? And the children were judging me. And I was like, well, what do I want? Do I want them to be the kind of people that try to hold you accountable if you say you want to do a thing? Or do I want them focused on weight? And then I'm like, what am I doing? And then I just want to weep because I'm like, I'm ruining my damn kids and they going to be eating 10 chicken nuggets. And
listen, Malcolm was deep when he asked that question, who taught you to hate yourself? And a lot of it is...
Don't say your mama.
But it is a lot of it. But that's the thing about messaging, is that it's effective. Any systemic power grab has to be impactful on the people grabbing the power and the people at whose expense the power is being grabbed at. And so, like, when you really look at that question, like, who taught you to hate yourself? So many of us, like, I know for me, it was normal for me to be ribbed by my adult families, by my cousins. Like, I thought all fat people got Jones by their family, right? Like,
they did.
But it goes back deeper. Like, I know for a fact that so many of the issues that I had with my dad and how he spoke to me about my weight was because that's how his mom spoke to him about his weight, right? And those generational things that come from people sort of tying, particularly in the South, particularly in places where Jim Crow was heavy. You see the pictures now of Black people going out to get groceries, dressed up in whole suits and ties. And it's like, to go to the supermarket, sis, where was y'all going? But this idea that you wanted to be presentable, that you wanted to try to convince them.
All the respectability.
Yes, all of the respectability. I am worthy. I am a good person. And so that pressure comes from somewhere. You learn it. And then you internalize it, and you knowingly or unknowingly, you continue to pass down this idea that there is something you need to be in order to be good enough. And whether that means getting all the education, working twice as hard as everybody else to get half as much, and even making sure that you look presentable. You're not too big. You don't want people to think you sloppy. You don't want people to think you lazy. Like, it really is a deep question, because we are teaching ourselves to hate each other because that is what they taught us.
We're going to have another show, Amber, where we talk about how we fix this, because we can't.
I know.
We're just here today like, look, we were fat. People made fun of us. We were traumatized, and probably we're traumatizing our own kids. Like,
Yes.
this just can't be the end of this story.
No,
This
it
is not.
can't. But I think part of how we end it, to the point you're making, is by recognizing that it is structural and systemic, and it is not just you with the dirty thoughts you have about yourself in your closet or in your bathroom when you just step off the scale. That is part of a larger, broader way that the systems and structures of injustice around us conspire to keep us subjugated. And if we don't do anything today but plant that seed in people, then I think that's powerful, because so many people are out here straight up hating themselves. Like they are just nothing, like they are doing everything wrong. And that ain't it at all.
So, Amber, we've talked about some of our personal stories in terms of dealing with dieting and weight and all of the things that come along with that. But tell us about how we get treated by healthcare professionals, right? So whether that's people who are fat or not, talk about what the healthcare industry sort of does.
So it's so interesting because we're going to talk about this a little more in detail in the homework, but the science is very clear, and it's been clear for a while now, that body size is a bad metric to use to judge somebody's healthiness.
So you mean to tell me I just can't look at somebody and be like, okay, you fat, you unhealthy, you skinny, you healthy. I just can't do that.
So let me tell you, and I'm going to read the study, child, because I don't normally do facts and figures. That's Erika's ministry. But there was a study done in 2008 by the Archives of Internal Medicine, and they tracked blood pressure, good cholesterol, triglycerides, blood sugar, and C-reactive proteins as an indicator of overall cardiovascular health. And let me tell you what they found. They found that 24% of thin adults, as defined by an ideal BMI, posted at least two of the risk factors. Now, although half of the people in the study who were classified as obese based on their BMI also posted two or more risk factors, what they did find is that 1 out of every 3 of the obese people were metabolically healthy, which means that 33% of the people in that study that had a BMI that defined them as medically obese were actually metabolically healthy across all of those indicators that they were using to judge cardiovascular health. And the conclusion of that study was that body size can be misleading regarding cardiovascular health, and it is not the best indicator regarding a person's overall health.
And I just feel like a lot of times, we like doctors and healthcare professionals, so don't take it that way. But sometimes I know I have experienced people are just lazy sometimes, right? Like a lot of times in terms of being a doctor, you were sort of trained to go 9 times out of 10, this set of things means X, right? And so you go, well, this looks like that time and I'm going to say it's X. But somebody's got to be that other time. And so I just kind of want to talk a little bit more about how doctors can sort of play a role in terms of sort of perpetuating these stereotypes of just because you're fat, you're unhealthy, and just because you're slim, then you are healthy. Because I know that I have personally gone through some of those things where, people don't want to dig deeper. They're like, oh, well, you seem to be fine. I'm like, but you can't look at me and tell that. Like, can't y'all get some blood out? Can't y'all, do I need to pee in the cup for you? Like, how can I give you what you need for you to take the next step?
Oh, yeah. And we've talked about that a little bit here in the brokish space, but it is well documented that there is an absolute medical bias in how healthcare is delivered to people of color and Black people, particularly Black women. We talked about that a little bit with childbirth, with a lot of the denial of COVID testing to Black people. And so it is very easy when you see somebody and they're complaining of certain things to say, oh, well, you need to go home, get on a diet and exercise. But a lot of times what the data is showing is that because concerns are disregarded, holistic things, particularly like stuff when it comes to hormonal imbalances, problems that are harder to spot, that are not diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, are oftentimes overlooked because it is very clear that a lot of health professionals simply do not believe that Black patients are qualified or credible enough to speak to what is going on in their own body. And that is really sad.
Have you had any instance of you going with a complaint to the doctor and the doctor's just like, go lose some weight?
Oh, yeah.
Then that'll fix your problem.
Also, in 2018, I was very sick. I actually didn't work the first quarter of that year. Actually, 2019. I had a stroke at the end of 2018.
Y'all see how Amber just
I know,
threw in, I had a stroke.
In the middle of a jury trial, y'all. Like in real life, I was in a jury trial and I had a stroke. So the doctors was doing all these tests on me and they were like, we can't find nothing. We can't find nothing. And they were like, you need to lose weight. I was like, I have lost 200 pounds. So what you got now? What you got now? I mean, so yes, I do need to lose a little more weight, but I done lost some weight and I kept it off 2 babies in 12 years. So what you got now? Well, we don't know. We did an MRI. We can't find anything. Can't find anything. So finally I went to a specialist, y'all, after months of this. You're fine. I'm like,
you just fat.
I know. And I'm like, I can't be fine. I just had a stroke. You don't have high blood pressure. You don't have high cholesterol. You're fine. Y'all, my cella, there's this thing in your brain that's supposed to hold brain fluid. Mine was empty. It was empty.
Huh?
I know. The cella is called a cella, SELLA. Your cell is supposed to hold your brain fluid. Mine was empty. Didn't have nothing in it. And it was one doctor that just hung in there with me. Was like, I believe you. I know something's wrong with you. Because you're the only person that ever came in here and asked me to give you 2 more weeks to work before you went on FMLA. So I know something wrong with you. Right. And yeah, but if I had just took that and went home, like I have no idea what would have happened. But child, my whole little brain boat was empty. Didn't have no brain juice in it.
You'd have been out there working out and then mess around and have another stroke, but you'd have been losing the weight they told you to lose.
That part right there. So yes, it is real in these streets. And let me tell you something. The testing, what's the issue? You know, people talking to you crazy. It can cause you to question your own voice. Because at a lot of points, I was like, well, hell, is something wrong with me? You know, am I crazy? I mean, you know, granted, listen, I was going through a divorce. Right. So maybe I was like, you know, maybe after I kick him out, I'm going to feel better. Maybe I am crazy, you know, but wow. Thank God I kept going because really there was a bigger problem that needed to be addressed. And if it hadn't been addressed, who knows what would have happened. So, yeah.
Well, we glad you got your cella right.
Yeah.
Y'all, I don't know. I've never heard about a cella until today, but I'm glad Amber's is good.
Okay, listen, child, I didn't know what it was either. You know, I go to the doctor like old people with my pencil and paper. I was like, can you spell that, please? So I can Google it with my mama tonight and diagnose myself on WebMD. Right. So, yes.
So I think that's a part of the thing is that we do have to be, and we talk about this, right? Like you have to be your own best advocate. You really have to be knowledgeable about your body and you have to recognize that you are more than your weight, right? And you can't just take the word of someone who's just like, go out and lose weight and that's going to magically fix your problem. But a part of it for me is I think that society really has caused the word fat to be a pejorative. And I just don't think it ought to be, right? Like we talk about skinny people and you're just skinny and that's just what it is. And if you fat and that's just what it is. And we really just have to move away from associating so much value and worth to your size. And I'm talking to myself right now. I'm not talking to anybody else necessarily. But I think that having that shift in mindset first with ourselves, I think is really helpful as we sort of enter the world in a different way. And not in one of those corny, like body positivity things, because I think I personally don't know how to feel about body positivity and a lot of the movements that I've seen, because a lot of it is really, to me, very hollow and corny and not really rooted in a lot. Mm-hmm. But I'm really talking about just getting to a real place of acceptance for whatever your it is.
Absolutely. And I think part of that also is the recognizing that any type of true health and wellness has to incorporate and embrace a culture consciousness that I think the superficial dieting does not. And if you notice, particularly with Black people, the first thing they tell us is you can't eat your food anymore. You can't eat no mac and cheese. You can't eat no greens. You can't eat no chicken. You can't, this idea that we have to discard our whole cultural connection, our whole cultural framework, how we eat, how we socialize, the things we like in order to attain something. And I think that to me really is my fundamental problem with health and wellness, because you can't ask anybody to do something for life that is not culturally sensitive to who they are at their core. And trying to convince somebody to hate the things they ate growing up, the things that are a part of gatherings, the things that are part of celebrations, it really is setting people up for failure. And it really is trying to ingrain a deep self-hatred and a deep rejection fundamentally at the core of things that are just more than how you look. It's part of your identity and part of your being.
Sure.
And I think for me, that really is why dieting is so ineffective. You look through them cookbooks, child, and it's like some of the stuff, I'm like, what is this? Like things I've never seen before. Like, I don't want to eat this. This does not look appealing to me. Like, what is this? Like, what is this? I don't know what it is. I never ate it before. I don't know how to say it. That I ain't never seen this in my grocery store. What is this stuff? You know? What is this? What is this?
And it's interesting you point that out, because I think to me, the older I get, the more I have that appreciation for those cultural connections and the food that I ate growing up. Because I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house, and it was full of okra and cornbread and sweet potatoes and all of those things. And that does sort of, engender sort of this nostalgia in me that I appreciate. Now, at the same time, I understand that when we're talking about health and wellness, there is a right way, right? We need to sleep enough.
Yeah.
Like, so much of health is in how much and how well you sleep. And so we've got to sleep enough. We've got to drink enough water along with the other things we might be drinking. Just make sure you get enough water in there. And yes, we can't eat all those things all the time, but I think you're right. The sort of the idea that we are going to dismiss it or completely abandon it because what is that? And I'm like, well, what it is good. And, we can do that sometimes when we want to do that. And that's okay.
Or just do it in a different way. Cook your greens with smoked turkey instead of ham hocks. Don't put no bacon grease in them. Just cook them with the smoked turkey. Put some plant-based butter on your sweet potato and bake it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think this idea that we have to. Now listen, it ain't exactly the same.
Don't be giving me no recipe for no macaroni and cheese that ain't right, Amber.
Now listen, many don't burn no chicken, and I don't mess with that macaroni and cheese. Now we're gonna do it right. But you don't have to get rid of everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want no dandelion greens. I ain't never seen I don't know nobody who eat dandelion greens, and I don't want none. I'm 35. I don't want.
I don't know what that is.
Girl, I just was in the cookbook earlier, and the lady had a dandelion green salad with a mustard vinaigrette. And I said, well, where do you get dandelion greens? Because I ain't never seen them. Not at the Kroger. Not at.
What's wrong with collards?
That part.
Okay.
I don't know.
I grew up in a turnip greenhouse, though. My grandparents always cook turnip greens.
Oh, you got to mix that mustard and them turnips, sis. That's what that is.
Yeah, we have mustard. I mean, turnips growing up. That was the kind we had.
The next thing that we have to talk about too, when we talk about sleeping and eating and drinking, is to recognize that, y'all, it don't matter how much sleep we get. If we out here in the world stressed out every day, we going down fast. Stress will kill you. It will kill you. And there's not a diet you can be on. There ain't enough hydration you can have to outdo what stress does to your body. And so many of these quick fixes that we talk about disregards the fact that it's like Black people walking around here in whole traumatic states, limit in trauma. Stress will kill you. It really will.
And if the pandemic hasn't shown us this, like, oh my gosh, it just amplifies everything. And one other thing I wanted to mention too, Amber, and I want to ask you about this. So we talked about what we know we need to do, right? So it's not about dieting. It's not about fat, skinny. It's about doing the right thing. So you've got to sleep enough. You've got to eat a good, balanced diet. You've got to get enough hydration. You've got to avoid the stress. But you've got to move your body too, right? So exercise is an important part of mental health too, and what it can do to help relieve some of that stress. But here's where I struggle with exercise. I have been socialized to believe that if it is not super high impact, that it ain't nothing. So I'm on this group chat And we do workout check-ins every day, right? So people be like, I worked out today. And somebody will be like, oh, I walked around the block with my kids. Or I tossed the baseball around in the backyard. Or I went to the fair, and I'm going to count that because I'm walking around. And me, I'm like rolling my eyes at my friends like, y'all ain't done nothing, okay? That ain't exercise. Super judgmentally, right? Like, because I'm like, no. And even in my own neighborhood, sometimes I don't want to run, Amber, but I want to walk. But literally, my mind is like, it ain't nothing if you ain't running, Erika. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I, again, don't know how to get out of this mindset of why isn't it exercise and why isn't it healthy for me to go out on a nice, sunny, warm day and walk around the little lake and see the ducks? Like, that seems like that would be good for my mental and physical health. But it's like the socialization doesn't allow me to do that. And I feel so trapped by that. So I just wanted to ask about how you feel about exercise and the types of exercise you do.
I feel constantly inadequate that, in my mind, I'll say, well, I'm a run walk because I call mine struggle jog. Like I either struggle jog or I run walk. And then some days I can't get it how it is in my mind. I'm a struggle jog this much and I'm a walk this much. So yeah, I definitely have to fight against that too. And what I have to tell myself personally is that I am not doing this to get to a number. I'm doing this to stay here, right? To stay here and stay where I am. But that's very hard because you're right. You walk in and you see people jog past you, ride past you on their bike, and you do feel a little inadequate. But I just try to tell myself slow and steady wins the race. And it doesn't work a lot of days because I feel like, well, I haven't really exercised. So I might as well go in the house and have a bowl of ice cream because I really didn't do nothing. But yeah, it's a hard mindset to get over. I just try to keep going and do something every day, even if I just walk. Although I will admit that those days I do feel like I've done less than the days where I can struggle jog or run walk too. So, it's real. It's the battlefield of the mind, child. It's real in these streets.
It is. It is certainly that way. And this whole idea of dieting and overcoming all of this, like I said, Amber, I really think we need to have another episode because maybe I will be able to get delivered because today it is clear that the dieting industry has me and I don't have control over it.
Agreed. I mean, listen, until we get delivered, if you need some vinegar or some detox pills or anything.
Amber, we just talked about it.
I'm kidding.
How you gonna offer me to?
I'm kidding. But no, yeah, I need the deliverance too, okay? Because hey, I got the whole t-shirt.
So, Amber, do we have any homework that can maybe help to get us a step closer to deliverance?
Yes. So listen, y'all, I've been taking it easy on this homework during the pandemic because I know ain't nobody got time for doing a whole bunch of stuff. But listen, this is important because we all out here trapped in a never-ending cycle. So we got a little bit of homework today, but it's the first time in a long time. So y'all don't at me, okay? So it's one of two things. You can either do number one or do number two. There is a fantastic book by a Black female psychologist, nutritionist, and dietitian named Dr. Sabrina Strings. And the name of the book is Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia. And we're going to put a link in the receipts to where you can purchase the book or get it on an ebook. But I highly recommend it. And if you don't want to read because you still pandemic struggling, you can listen to Dr. Strings. She actually was a guest on another podcast. So see, don't ever call us haters, okay? Because we're finna tell you about another podcast. So don't ever call us no haters because that's just the devil is a lie. But Dr. Strings talked about the work she did to write the book and just some of the things she learned and about medical racism and stuff in the Body Kindness podcast. She did a 2-part series. And so we are going to link those in the receipts as well. So if you ain't got time to read a book, listen to both episodes of that and just awaken your mind. And hopefully it will help you to see some patterns in yourself that are related to some of the overarching stuff going on in the world today. So either read the book or watch the podcast.
And because we know that there are always students who want to take it to the next level, y'all get on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram and tell us, are y'all having these same challenges that we are? Like, tell us, are we out here by ourselves? Is it just me and Amber?
No, we're going to
Y'all
have a
feeling this
testimony.
too?
Share your testimony. Come on, somebody. Let's deliver each other. Come on.
We take testimonies too.
Yes.
Yes. The doors are open.
We Baptist.
Amber just said that, and that made me think about something she just told me earlier, and I'm just really cracking up, and y'all don't have any idea why, but that's okay. So, y'all, it's clear that this country has been masterful in making us believe that we aren't good enough and we don't belong even in our own bodies. We just can't allow this pseudoscience of like the BMI and what it means, or propaganda or bad intentions, make us believe less than the truth about ourselves. We want all of you brokers out there to be happy and healthy, but we can't claim health or sickness based on what we find at the scale. We have to raise up generations of children who value whole, healthy foods, clean water, rest, and movement without the judgment of others. And like Mother Nikki Giovanni told us, stop asking someone who hates you if you're pretty, because we know you are. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to catching up with you on the next episode of Brokish.
All right, good people. Thanks for listening to Brokish. For more episodes, visit us at brokish.com or subscribe, and Brokish will get direct deposited into your favorite podcast app on the 1st and 15th. Share Brokish with your friends and join the conversation on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Music for Brokish is Come Get Some by Blank and Kit. Until next time, goodbye and good luck.